"You people always try to board with fake documents," Bradley Parker snarled as he grabbed Dr. Maya Richardson by her wrist, violently yanking her against the boarding counter. Her passport fell from her hand, scattering her boarding pass and inspection documents across the terminal floor. The gate agent's pale face flushed red with anger as he held her government passport over a coffee cup, deliberately dropping it into the steaming liquid. "Let's see how real this passport is now," he sneered, pulling out a lighter from his pocket. The flame caught the edge of the soaked passport, and within seconds, the identification document of the Federal Aviation Administration's chief inspector was burning in front of 50 horrified passengers, all with phones raised, recording every second. Maya Richardson maintained perfect composure, her eyes steady as she watched her federal credentials burn, merely saying, "I'm documenting every federal violation occurring right now." Have you ever witnessed someone abuse their authority so completely that it destroyed their entire career in less than 60 seconds? This is exactly what happened at Denver International Airport's Gate 37, when a routine boarding check turned into a federal case that would transform airline security protocols nationwide. If you find this story shocking, hit that like button now and subscribe for more stories of justice being served. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. 2 hours earlier, the alarm softly chimed at 5:45 a.m. in Dr. Maya Richardson's tastefully decorated Denver hotel room. She was already awake, reviewing inspection notes on her tablet, while CNN played quietly in the background. At 43, Dr. Richardson had perfected her morning routine through years of federal service and international travel. She methodically prepared her coffee, black with a single packet of sugar, while listening to the morning's aviation news. On the dresser, family photos were carefully arranged, her late husband Michael in his Air Force uniform, smiling proudly before the accident that took his life 8 years ago. Their daughter Zoe, now 17, in her science fair winter's pose with a model airplane design that had earned her a scholarship to MIT. "Remember your promise, Mom," came Zoe's voice through the video call. "You'll be back for my graduation speech on Sunday, right?" "Absolutely, sweetheart," Maya replied, her voice warm but authoritative, the same tone that commanded respect in federal briefing rooms. "This is just a standard inspection tour. Denver today, then Chicago and Atlanta. I'll be home by Saturday night. Just make sure you don't go full chief inspector on any poor airline employees," Zoe teased, knowing her mother's reputation for thoroughness. "I'm traveling incognito today," Maya smiled, glancing at her government phone face down on the nightstand, an unread text from the Secretary of Transportation visible on the screen. "Regular passenger experience. That's the only way to truly evaluate the system." After ending the call, Maya methodically prepared for the day. She placed her FAA Chief Inspector badge in the inner pocket of her blazer, tucked her official government phone into her purse, and secured her diplomatic passport in her travel wallet, alongside her regular civilian one. Her briefcase contained an embossed leather portfolio with the presidential seal, a gift from her swearing-in ceremony 3 months earlier when she'd become the youngest person and first black woman to hold the position of FAA Chief Inspector. As Maya left her hotel room, the television continued playing a special report about her recent appointment and the sweeping airline safety reforms she'd been implementing. The news anchor described her as the aviation industry's most formidable new leader, while her official portrait filled the screen, unnoticed, as the hotel room door closed behind her. In the lobby, Maya greeted the doorman with genuine warmth. "Beautiful morning, isn't it, James?" "Sure is, ma'am. Off to catch a flight?" he asked, hailing a taxi. "Yes, routine trip, nothing special," she replied, though her route was anything but routine. As part of her undercover inspection program, she'd deliberately booked herself on Mountain Sky Airlines, a regional carrier with concerning safety incident reports and 12 passenger complaints about discriminatory treatment filed in the past month alone. The taxi driver recognized her immediately. "Aren't you that new FAA lady? Saw you on the morning news." Maya smiled politely. "I get that a lot. Just a government employee heading to a meeting." As the taxi approached Denver International Airport, Maya checked her watch, a sleek but discreet timepiece that had been a gift from her team at the FAA when she'd received her appointment. She had deliberately scheduled a tight connection, wanting to observe how Mountain Sky Airlines handled boarding procedures under pressure. The enormous white peaks of Denver International's iconic terminal rose before her, a facility she had inspected numerous times throughout her career. Today, however, she wasn't here as the FAA's chief inspector. Today she was simply Dr. Maya Richardson, PhD in Aeronautical Engineering, boarding Flight 1237 to Chicago, just another passenger in the system she was responsible for overseeing. What she didn't know was that gate agent Bradley Parker had already started his day with 3 passenger confrontations, a written warning from his supervisor about aggressive customer interactions, and a deep resentment toward the FAA's new discriminatory passenger treatment investigations that had put Mountain Sky Airlines under increased scrutiny. As she paid the taxi driver, Maya's government phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Inspection required by Monday, White House briefing scheduled. She silenced it without replying and entered the terminal, unaware that the next hour would trigger the most significant aviation security overhaul in American history. Maya Richardson approached Gate 37 precisely 12 minutes before scheduled boarding for Flight 1237. Flight 130. The gate area was crowded with travelers, many looking anxious as the departure time neared, and no boarding announcement had been made. Her trained eye immediately spotted multiple procedural violations. No agent at the desk, boarding passes being checked by an untrained baggage handler, and a security door propped open with a luggage cart. She took a seat near the boarding area, discreetly making notes on her phone about the security breaches. When Bradley Parker finally appeared at the gate, he seemed flustered and immediately began barking orders at passengers to form a line. First class and priority passengers only. Everyone else, stay seated, he shouted, waving his hands impatiently. Maya observed as Parker processed the first few passengers with barely a glance at their documentation. When an elderly Asian couple approached with their boarding passes, Parker suddenly became meticulous, questioning the validity of their paperwork and calling for a supervisor to verify their tickets, causing an unnecessary delay of nearly 7 minutes. Next, Parker called. Not looking up as Maya stepped forward, she presented her boarding pass and diplomatic passport. Good morning. Parker's eyes narrowed as he examined her documentation. This doesn't look right, he said immediately, holding the diplomatic passport up to the light. Where did you get this? It's a standard government-issued diplomatic passport, Maya explained calmly. I'm traveling on official business. What are you doing in first class? Parker demanded, ignoring her explanation. I have a confirmed first-class reservation, Maya responded professionally, pointing to her boarding pass. Don't get smart with me, Parker snapped, loud enough for nearby passengers to turn their heads. These diplomatic passports aren't for domestic flights. I'm going to need to see a regular ID. Maya reached into her purse and produced her standard passport, maintaining her composure. Here's my regular passport as well. Both are valid for this flight. Parker's accusations escalated as he examined her second passport. This looks suspicious too, he declared. The photo doesn't even look like you. The passport was issued last year, Maya explained patiently. Both documents are perfectly valid. Acting suspicious at a security checkpoint, Parker announced loudly, as if reading from a script. You probably stole these documents. A small crowd was gathering now. A young woman in the line behind Maya had taken out her phone and was recording the interaction, broadcasting on Instagram Live. Her screen showed 57 viewers. Is there a problem here? Asked a concerned passenger, a middle-aged white man in a business suit. Stay out of this, Parker snapped. This woman is presenting suspicious documentation. I assure you my documentation is in order, Maya stated firmly. I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Oh, I bet you would, Parker said with a sneer. You people always want to talk to the supervisor when you get caught. The racist implication hung in the air. The young woman's Instagram Live counter jumped to 230 viewers as she whispered to her audience, "This gate agent is being super racist to this lady." Parker called over 2 TSA officers who had been standing nearby. I need assistance with a passenger attempting to board with questionable documentation, he announced. The officers approached hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating situation. Ma'am, can you step aside, please? One PSA officer requested. Of course, Maya replied, maintaining her professionalism. But I want to be clear that my documentation is valid and this gate agent is creating an unnecessary disruption. As she stepped aside, Parker snatched her diplomatic passport back. I'm confiscating this until we can verify it's real. You have no authority to confiscate federal documents, Maya stated firmly. That's government property. Parker's face flushed with anger. I have every authority at this gate. I determine who boards and who doesn't. The crowd of onlookers had grown to nearly 30 people. 3 more passengers had begun recording, and the original Instagram live stream now showed over 1,500 viewers with comments flooding in. "This is outrageous!" someone in the crowd called out. Parker grabbed Maya's wrist, pulling her roughly against the counter. "Listen, I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but you're not getting on this flight." The TSA officers looked alarmed but hesitated to intervene. One spoke quietly into his radio. Maya remained remarkably composed. "I suggest you remove your hand from my person immediately. You are assaulting a federal employee?" "Federal employee? Right?" Parker laughed derisively. He released her wrist, only to grab her passport, which had fallen to the counter. He held it over his coffee cup. "Let's see how authentic this diplomatic passport really is." The gasps from the crowd were audible as he deliberately dropped the passport into the steaming liquid. The maroon cover of the diplomatic passport darkened as it absorbed the coffee. "Oops," he said with a malicious smile. Then, in a move that shocked everyone watching, he pulled out his personal lighter. "Maybe we should try it out," he said, and ignited the lighter's flame. "That's destruction of federal property." Parker touched the flame to the coffee-soaked passport. The liquid-saturated paper caught fire instantly, burning with a small blue flame. He dropped it into a metal trash can beside the counter, where it continued to smolder and burn. "Now you can apply for a real American passport," Parker announced loudly. The Instagram live counter hit 7,000 viewers. A news station van had just pulled up outside the terminal, responding to tips about a disturbance at Gate 37. Maya Richardson stood perfectly still, her eyes never leaving Parker's face. "I need your full name and employee ID number," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Bradley Parker, ID 45,873, he replied mockingly. "Feel free to complain, nothing ever happens anyway." The airport's operations manager was now pushing through the crowd, having been alerted to the disturbance. Behind him, 2 airport police officers followed. The entire gate area was now packed with spectators, phones raised high to capture every moment. The Instagram live counter hit 23,000 viewers, and comments were pouring in too fast to read. The hashtag Denver Airport Racism was already trending in 3 states. Maya Richardson's professional mask never slipped, but as the operations manager approached, anyone watching closely would have noticed a subtle shift in her posture. She wasn't just a passenger being mistreated anymore. She was preparing to reveal exactly who she was. The airport operations manager, Andrew Simmons, pushed through the last of the onlookers with the airport police close behind. His face showed the strained expression of someone confronting a public relations disaster in real time. "What's happening here?" he demanded, taking in the smoldering remains of the passport in the trash can, the crowd of recording passengers, and Maya Richardson's composed but rigid stance. Bradley Parker immediately launched into his defense. "This passenger was attempting to board with suspicious documentation. I was following security protocols." "By burning a passport?" Simmons asked, incredulously. "It was clearly fake," Parker insisted. "Diplomatic passports aren't for domestic flights. She's trying to pull something." The TSA officers looked uncomfortable. One of them leaned toward Simmons and whispered something that made the operations manager's eyes widen. At that precise moment, Maya's government phone rang. The distinctive ringtone reserved for highest priority calls cut through the tense atmosphere. She removed the phone from her purse, glanced at the screen, and answered, putting it on speaker. "This is Dr. Richardson," she said calmly. "Dr. Richardson, this is Secretary of Transportation William Harrison. Am I interrupting your inspection?" The authoritative voice boomed through the phone's speaker, clearly audible to everyone nearby. The crowd fell silent. Bradley Parker's smug expression began to falter. "Actually, Mr. Secretary, I'm experiencing an interesting situation at Denver International Gate 37, Maya replied. "A Mountain Sky Airlines gate agent named Bradley Parker has just destroyed my diplomatic passport by burning it after making several racist remarks and physically assaulting me." There were 3 seconds of silence on the line. "I'm speaking with Agent Parker?" Secretary Harrison asked, his voice now ice cold. "Yes, he's standing right here," Maya confirmed. "Agent Parker," the secretary's voice commanded, "you are currently detaining FAA Chief Inspector Dr. Maya Richardson, who is conducting an official federal safety inspection of your airline. Federal agents from the Denver field office have been notified and are en route." You have approximately 60 seconds to return any remaining documentation to Dr. Richardson before they arrive. The blood drained from Parker's face. That's impossible," he stammered. "Check her credentials, Mr. Parker," Secretary Harrison ordered. "Now." With trembling hands, Parker reached for the leather portfolio still on the counter. As he opened it, the presidential seal became visible to everyone nearby, along with Maya's official FAA Chief Inspector identification and her photo ID with federal security clearance markers. "Oh my God!" someone in the crowd gasped. "That's the FAA Chief Inspector!" another voice called out, phones raised higher as the revelation spread through the terminal. The Instagram live stream now showed over 78,000 viewers, and 3 national news networks had picked up the feed. "Mr. Parker," Maya said, her voice now carrying the full authority of her position, "you have just committed multiple federal offenses, including assault on a federal officer, destruction of government property, interference with a federal investigation, and civil rights violations. I suggest you step away from the counter immediately." Parker's legs seemed to buckle slightly. His mouth opened and closed without sound. Andrew Simmons, the operations manager, moved quickly to Maya's side. "Dr. Richardson, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am for this incident. I assure you this does not reflect our airport's standards or policies." Maya nodded acknowledgement, but kept her focus on Parker. "Mr. Secretary, I'll send you a full preliminary report within the hour. I believe this incident will feature prominently in my congressional testimony next week." "I'll inform the President immediately," Secretary Harrison replied. "The Department of Justice has been notified. Please continue your inspection as planned once this situation is resolved." The call ended just as 3 black SUVs pulled up to the terminal entrance, visible through the large windows. Men and women in dark suits emerged, moving purposefully toward Gate 37. The crowd parted as 6 FBI agents approached, credentials displayed. The lead agent, a tall woman with short dark hair, addressed Maya directly. "Chief Inspector Richardson, I'm Special Agent Danielle Foster, FBI Denver Field Office. We received an emergency alert from the Secretary's office." "Thank you for responding so quickly, Agent Foster," Maya said. "I'd like to file formal charges against Gate Agent Parker for the offenses I just enumerated." Bradley Parker was now visibly shaking, his face ashen. "Please," he whispered, "I didn't know. Your knowledge, or lack thereof, regarding my identity is irrelevant, Mr. Parker," Maya stated clearly. "Your actions would have been equally illegal regardless of who I was." The lead FBI agent turned to Parker. "Sir, please place your hands behind your back." As Agent Foster began reading Parker his Miranda rights, the crowd's phones continued recording, capturing every word. The Instagram live counter had surpassed 100,000 viewers. National news alerts were now buzzing on phones throughout the airport. Andrew Simmons stood beside Maya, looking utterly mortified. "Dr. Richardson, on behalf of Denver International Airport, I want to welcome..." "Mr. Simmons," Maya interrupted quietly, "I suggest you focus on cooperating with the federal investigation that begins today. This incident is merely the visible symptom of systemic issues that my office has been tracking for months." She turned to address the Mountain Sky Airlines staff who had gathered nearby, watching in horror as their colleague was handcuffed. "My inspection of Mountain Sky Airlines will continue as planned," she announced, "though I believe we've already identified several critical violations that warrant immediate attention." The revelation was complete. The woman whose diplomatic passport had been burned, whose authority had been challenged, and whose dignity had been assaulted, now stood revealed as one of the most powerful officials in American aviation, with the full weight of the federal government responding to her call. The black SUVs had barely come to a complete stop before additional FBI agents emerged, moving with practiced efficiency through the terminal. The lead team had secured Bradley Parker, who now stood handcuffed near the gate counter, his Mountain Sky Airlines badge and security credentials removed. Special Agent Foster was coordinating with her team, establishing a perimeter around Gate 37 while passengers from the delayed flight were being rerouted to another gate by flustered airline staff. "Dr. Richardson," Agent Foster said, turning back to Maya, "we have a secure location set up if you'd like to provide your statement." "Thank you, Agent Foster," Maya replied, "but I'd prefer to continue with my inspection as planned. I can provide my statement afterward." 3 more federal agents approached, these wearing the distinct insignia of the Department of Transportation's Inspector General's office. Their leader, a stern-looking man with salt and pepper hair, addressed Maya formally. "Chief Inspector Richardson, I'm Deputy Inspector General Thomas Reynolds. The Secretary dispatched us immediately. We've initiated an emergency audit of all Mountain Sky Airlines operations nationwide." Maya nodded. "Excellent, Deputy Reynolds. I want every flight grounded until we can verify proper documentation and training protocols." Andrew Simmons, the airport operations manager, looked stricken. "Ground every Mountain Sky flight? That's over 60 aircraft currently in operation." "Then I suggest your team begin notifications immediately, Mr. Simmons," Maya responded firmly. As these instructions were being relayed, Bradley Parker was being escorted toward the exit by 2 FBI agents. His shoulders were slumped, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. As he passed Maya, he attempted one last plea. "Dr. Richardson, please. I have a family. I didn't know who you were." Maya regarded him steadily. "Mr. Parker, that is precisely the problem. You shouldn't need to know someone's title to treat them with basic human dignity and respect for their civil rights." Agent Foster stepped forward. "Bradley Parker, you are under arrest for assault on a federal officer under Title 18, United States Code, Section 111. Destruction of government property under Title 18, United States Code, Section 1361. Civil rights violations under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242. And obstruction of a federal investigation under Title 18, United States Code, Section 1505. As Parker was led away, his Mountain Sky Airlines supervisor, a nervous-looking woman named Janet Collins, approached Maya with a folder clutched tightly in her hands. "Dr. Richardson, I just wanted to assure you that Mr. Parker's actions don't reflect our airline's policies," she began. "Miss Collins, is it?" Maya interrupted, glancing at the woman's name badge. "I'd like to see Mr. Parker's personnel file immediately. I don't have authorization to... I am authorizing you. Under my authority as FAA Chief Inspector conducting a federal safety investigation," Maya stated firmly. "The file, please." Janet Collins reluctantly handed over the folder she'd been clutching. Maya opened it and began reviewing its contents as Deputy Reynolds looked over her shoulder. What they found was disturbing but not surprising. 9 previous complaints for aggressive behavior toward passengers, Maya noted, flipping through the documents. 3 formal reprimands for procedural violations. 1 suspension for unprofessional conduct that was later reduced to a written warning. She looked up at Collins. "And he was still working the gate?" Collins had no response. Agent Foster returned from escorting Parker out. "Chief Inspector, we've accessed the airport's security footage. Parker has been involved in 17 similar incidents in the past year alone. 11 of them involved passengers of color." Deputy Reynolds was already on his phone, relaying this information to Washington. The media presence outside the terminal had grown substantially, with news vans from all major networks setting up for live broadcasts. Inside, the Instagram live stream that had captured the initial confrontation had been picked up by national media. The young woman who had been recording, Aisha Johnson, a 22-year-old graduate student, was now being interviewed by reporters who had rushed to the scene. "I just couldn't believe what I was seeing," she told them, her phone still streaming. "He was so aggressive toward her, and then when he burned her passport. I've never seen anything like it." Her live stream now showed over 245,000 concurrent viewers, and the hashtags Justice for Richardson and FAA Inspector were trending nationwide. Maya's government phone rang again. This time it was a direct call from the White House Chief of Staff. "Dr. Richardson, the President has been briefed on the situation. He wants you to know that you have his full support and whatever resources you need for your investigation." "Thank you," Maya replied. "Please inform the President that I'll be implementing emergency protocols under FAA Regulation 49 CFR Part 1544, which will temporarily suspend Mountain Sky Airlines' operating certificate, pending a complete safety and civil rights compliance review." The formal federal response was now in full effect. Additional TSA officials had arrived, along with representatives from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. The Mountain Sky Airlines CEO had been contacted and was currently on an emergency flight to Denver. Agent Foster approached Maya again, this time with a tablet displaying a database of complaints. "Dr. Richardson, "We've found something concerning," she said. "Our database shows that Mountain Sky Airlines has had 83 civil rights complaints filed against them in the past 24 months. That's nearly 4 times the industry average." Maya took the tablet, reviewing the data with practiced efficiency. "And how many resulted in disciplinary action or policy changes?" "None, ma'am," Foster replied. "All were dismissed after internal reviews." Deputy Reynolds, who had been coordinating with his team, joined the conversation. "We've found a pattern. The airline has been systematically burying these complaints. There appears to be a culture of discrimination that extends well beyond Mr. Parker." Maya nodded. "This confirms our preliminary findings. The FAA has been monitoring similar patterns at several regional carriers. The airport's executive director had now arrived, along with members of the board of directors. They stood anxiously at the periphery, awaiting their turn to speak with the FAA chief inspector, whose impromptu inspection had uncovered a scandal that would soon engulf the entire aviation industry. Agent Foster received information through her earpiece, then turned to Maya. "The U.S. Attorney for the District of Colorado is on site. She'd like to formally charge Mr. Parker." U.S. Attorney Claire Bennett, an imposing figure in a crisp navy suit, approached with 2 assistant prosecutors. After brief introductions, she addressed the situation directly. "Based on the evidence already gathered, we'll be charging Mr. Parker with the following federal offenses," she announced, her voice carrying to everyone nearby. "Deprivation of rights under color of law, under Title 18, U.S.C. SS 242. Conspiracy against rights under Title 18, U.S.C. SS 242. Assault on a federal official under Title 18, U.S.C. SS 181, false imprisonment, destruction of government property under Title 18, U.S.C. S 1361, evidence tampering under Title 18, U.S.C. S 1519, and hate crime enhancements under Title 18, U.S.C. 249. The severity of the charges hung in the air. Each carried significant federal penalties, and together they represented the full force of federal law enforcement responding to a civil rights violation that had been captured live for hundreds of thousands of viewers. In a holding room nearby, Bradley Parker sat slumped in a chair, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Through the one-way glass, agents observed as he put his head in his hands, his entire body trembling. "I didn't know," he repeated to himself. "How was I supposed to know?" But the federal investigation was already looking far beyond Parker himself, to the systems and corporate culture that had enabled his behavior for years. The reckoning had only just begun. 3 months later, the federal courthouse in Denver was filled to capacity. Extra seating had been arranged to accommodate the numerous journalists, aviation industry representatives, and civil rights advocates attending the sentencing of former Mountain Sky Airlines gate agent Bradley Parker. Maya Richardson sat in the front row of the gallery, her posture perfect as always, reviewing notes for her congressional testimony scheduled for the following week. Since the incident, she had become a reluctant national figure. Her composed response to discrimination and her subsequent leadership in reforming airline practices had made her a powerful symbol of dignity and change. Judge Elena Ramirez entered the courtroom, and the proceedings began with solemn formality. Bradley Parker, now dressed in a simple suit rather than his former airline uniform, stood as the judge addressed him directly. "Mr. Parker, this court has found you guilty of multiple federal offenses, including civil rights violations, assault on a federal officer, and destruction of government property," Judge Ramirez stated. "These actions reflect not only personal prejudice, but a systemic failure within the aviation industry to properly address discriminatory practices." Parker, visibly thinner and with dark circles under his eyes, nodded slightly. "Before I pronounce sentence, Dr. Richardson has requested the opportunity to address the court," the judge continued, turning toward Maya. "Dr. Richardson, you may proceed." Maya approached the podium with measured steps. The courtroom fell completely silent. "Your Honor, the events of 3 months ago represent more than one man's actions or one airline's failures," she began. "They illuminate a pattern of discrimination that has persisted throughout our transportation systems for decades. Mr. Parker's behavior was enabled by a corporate culture that routinely dismissed complaints, particularly from passengers of color." Judge Ramirez looking directly at Parker. I do not seek vengeance, I seek change. The sentence Mr. Parker receives today should reflect not just punishment for past actions, but a clear message that our transportation systems must be accessible, safe, and equitable for all Americans. Judge Ramirez nodded thoughtfully before turning back to Parker. Mr. Parker, I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 8 years. Additionally, you are permanently barred from employment in any federally regulated transportation industry. Parker's shoulders slumped as the sentence was pronounced. His wife, seated in the back of the courtroom, quietly wiped away tears. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Maya as she exited the building. Dr. Richardson, what do you think of the sentence? One called out. Justice was served, she replied simply. But true justice will only be achieved when the systemic changes we're implementing take full effect. 6 months later, the Senate Transportation Committee hearing room was packed with legislators, industry leaders, and media. As Maya Richardson took her seat at the witness table, behind her, large screens displayed statistics and implementation timelines for what was now officially known as the Richardson Protocol, a comprehensive set of airline industry reforms focused on equal treatment, accountability, and civil rights protections. Dr. Richardson, began the committee chair, Senator James Williams, could you please share the preliminary results of the protocol implementation? Maya nodded, activating her presentation. The screens displayed a series of graphs and statistics. In the 6 months since implementation began, we've seen discrimination complaints decrease by 71% across all major carriers. Customer satisfaction ratings regarding equal treatment have increased by 83%. We've retrained over 47,000 airline employees with new civil rights compliance protocols, and 128 employees with documented patterns of discriminatory behavior have been terminated from their positions. The committee members reviewed the data with evident approval. And Mountain Sky Airlines? Asked Senator Williams. Mountain Sky Airlines has undergone a complete leadership restructuring, Maya replied. Their operating license was reinstated last month after they met all 147 compliance requirements. They've established an independent review board for all passenger complaints and implemented mandatory quarterly civil rights training for all customer-facing staff. The hearing continued for several hours, with Maya fielding questions about implementation challenges, budget allocations, and future expansion plans. Throughout, she maintained the same composed professionalism that had defined her response during the original incident. As she exited the Capitol building later that day, Maya passed a television in the lobby. On screen was a news report showing Bradley Parker in his orange prison jumpsuit being interviewed about his experiences. He looked directly into the camera, his former arrogance completely gone. I lost everything because I thought my uniform gave me power over people, he said. I'm serving my time and trying to understand why I did what I did. 1 year later, Maya Richardson's office at FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C. was a testament to her accomplishments. Awards lined the walls, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom she had received for her work on transportation equity reform. Her daughter Zoe's MIT engineering degree hung proudly beside Maya's own credentials. On her desk sat a framed copy of the Richardson Protocol, now implemented at every major airport in the United States and being adopted by international aviation authorities worldwide. The protocol had expanded beyond airlines to include all federally regulated transportation systems, from trains to buses to maritime operations. A knock at her door preceded the entrance of her Chief of Staff, Dr. Richardson. The Secretary of Transportation is here for your meeting. Maya welcomed Secretary Harrison, and they spent the next hour reviewing implementation data and planning the next phase of reforms. The President is extremely pleased with the results, the Secretary noted. Transportation civil rights complaints nationwide are down 64%. Your protocol has transformed not just aviation but our entire approach to transportation equity. After the meeting concluded, Maya took a moment to stand at her office window, looking out at the Washington Monument in the distance. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Mountain Sky Airlines leadership facing federal charges for pattern of civil rights violations. The investigation that began with her burned passport had uncovered systemic discrimination throughout the airline's corporate structure. The company itself had been reorganized under new leadership with strict oversight and compliance requirements. That evening, Maya visited the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, where a new exhibit on transportation equity in America featured her story alongside historical civil rights milestones in transportation. The charred remains of her diplomatic passport, recovered and preserved as evidence, now sat in a display case, a powerful symbol of both discrimination and transformation. As she stood before the exhibit, a young black girl approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Richardson?" the girl asked, clutching a science textbook to her chest. Maya smiled warmly. "I am. I'm doing my science project on aviation engineering because of you," the girl explained. "My mom says you showed everyone how to stand up for yourself with dignity." Maya knelt to the girl's level. "What's your name?" "Amara." "Well, Amara, remember that the most important credentials you'll ever carry aren't in a passport or badge. They're in how you conduct yourself when faced with injustice and in how you use whatever position you have to create positive change." Later that night, Maya called her daughter Zoe, now a graduate student at MIT's Aerospace Engineering program. "How are the reforms holding up, Mom?" Zoe asked. "1 year in and the data shows real measurable improvement," Maya replied. "But there's still so much work to do." "You know what Grandma always used to say," Zoe reminded her. "Justice isn't a destination, it's a journey." Maya smiled at the memory of her mother's wisdom. She was right, and sometimes that journey begins in the most unexpected places. "Like Gate 37 at Denver International," Zoe added. "Exactly like that." As Maya ended the call, she reflected on how a single moment of discrimination had catalyzed nationwide change. Her burned passport had ignited more than just paper. It had sparked a movement that was transforming how Americans experienced transportation, regardless of their color, background, or economic status. The Richardson Protocol wasn't just about airlines anymore. It became a model for accountability and civil rights protection across industries, a template for how institutions could address systemic discrimination with concrete, measurable reforms. If you've been moved by Dr. Richardson's story of dignity in the face of discrimination and her transformation of injustice into systemic change, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this video to spread awareness about how a single person's principled stand can create ripples of change throughout entire industries. Remember, true justice requires both accountability for wrongdoing and fundamental reform of the systems that enable it. Together, we can ensure that what happened at Gate 37 becomes a turning point rather than just another incident.